5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to the GHT Overland podcast.
Welcome back for part 2 with Amie and Matt of the Traveling Together Journal. In part 1, we covered new territory with protecting yourself from the natural elements, including those from monkeys.
Yes, we did. We also learned about Amie's easy one-pot Huevos Rancheros, along with insights on doing laundry on the road to crossing borders with the need for photocopies.
I was really intrigued with her LifeSaver Jerry can, and we'll hear more about that both from Amie and Matt later in part 2 as well.
We had a gap last week between part 1 and 2, so thank you for joining us once again to learn more from Amie and Matt's experiences overlanding from California to Panama, back to California.
Indeed. This week, we finished talking about border crossings, filtering water, refrigeration, recovery gear, and a lot more. So let's do our intro and getting into part 2.
The GHT Overland podcast is where you get the greatest interviews and insights from overland travelers around the globe, learning from their stories and experiences as we interview overlanders from places like Australia, Africa, the Americas, Portugal, and beyond.
You will learn the basics to the advanced in overlanding, so buckle up and get ready for more adventure. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lisa.
Anything unexpected that you needed to have with you, or documents that you weren't expecting?
I did kind of think that I had most of our documents sorted out before we left. It's really common that you need to have copies, just like photocopies of all your documents. So I left with a big folder of our passports and driver's license and paperwork for the car and paperwork for the dog. And then I was a little bit surprised when they would stamp our passport and then say that they needed a copy of that stamp, but that they couldn't make us the copy. So you had to go wander around the border area and find someone who owned a copy machine, and that was their business, was to make copies of your documents. So that usually added a little bit of excitement when the borders were spread out.
So they would, I just want to make sure I understand this right. They would give you a stamp, and then they would tell you, we need a copy of this, but we can't make you the copy.
That's correct. It's pretty common.
So they're supporting local business.
Basically, yeah. Then, I mean,
that's great.
A lot of them, a lot of them are fairly modern facilities if it's a commonly used border crossing. So you can look through their little window and you can see that they have computers and printers and all the stuff to do the job. But it's just their policy that they don't make the copy. So they give you your passport back with the stamp in it, and then you go find the person. Sometimes it involves actually just walking across the border to the other country and getting the copies made and then walking back to show them that you got the copies. So it's a little bit weird, but fairly common.
Interesting. Okay. Any specific border crossings that stand out to either one of you?
Actually, the one that's the weirdest, or that was the kind of an odd story for us, was crossing from Mexico back into the United States. The U.S.-Mexico border is different than all the borders that you're going to cross as you're going through Central America. The rest of them all kind of have a normal pattern. You show up to the border. Let's say you're crossing from Honduras to Nicaragua. So you show up to the Honduras side of the border, and you basically check yourself and your car out of Honduras. And then you cross what they call the frontera, which is just kind of like no man's land, and you get to the Nicaraguan side of the border. and you check yourselves and your car into Nicaragua, and then you carry on. Well, the U.S.-Mexican border, there's no frontera. It's just one line. And so on our way north, leaving Mexico, there's no facilities to leave Mexico. They don't check your paperwork or anything, or like check you out of Mexico. You just wait in a big line, wait on your side of your car. You don't even get out of the car. Basically, you just get to the kiosk as a U.S. citizen. You show them your passports and they let you in, basically.
It's like going through McDonald's drive-through window for U.S. borders or border crossings.
Okay.
Which was funny for us because we got to the guy, he's a U.S. border agent, and
we hadn't been in the country for almost 2 years. So we're like, well, where do we cancel our tip? And he's like, what's that? Well, it's a temporary import permit. We need to cancel it. We need our money back or whatever. We're like, where's the Banjercito? He's like, Banjer what? You know, and he just like has no idea what's going on. Like, he potentially has never been to Mexico, even though it's only like 10 feet away. It was just a really weird experience for us. And then we still had this tip Banjercito open and we needed to cancel it. So we had to deal with that later. And so that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it's like drive through the window, say hello, and carry on. It's like going to Canada for American citizens. Same. So that kind of level of border crossing. But like after the 9 borders we had done before, it was a little bit of a culture shock.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, very good.
Any specific safety planning you do or tips you can provide our listeners on safety and security?
Yeah. So one thing that we did in planning and designing our vehicle was that I was very insistent that we didn't have anything on the outside of our camper or our truck. So surfboards are all inside. We don't have extra spare tires or anything visible. Like we don't have any big off-road lights or antennas or max tracks or anything strapped to the outside of the truck. The idea just being that what you can't see doesn't tempt you, and also just trying not to draw attention to ourselves. So that was a big thing. And then we also just have an agreement basically between ourselves that you just kind of follow your gut. If a place doesn't feel right, then you respect that and leave. And I grew up going down to Baja with my family, and my dad would always say, remind us as we're crossing the border, if anything goes wrong, if we get held up or something, then just walk away. So that's kind of something that I still live by. We have a old cheap truck and filled it up with a bunch of stuff, and if we need to walk away, then that's what we'll do, and it'll be okay.
That's good.
And some tips you have for safe money management?
We have a Charles Schwab bank account, which as American citizens is a fantastic traveler's account, and you get all of your ATM fees back, like all of them. And we were able to link both of our accounts to it, so we could both put in money as we went, like bigger chunks of money, and then that's how we managed our money. And then we would go to ATMs, and since we got all of our fees back, we weren't worried about having to try to get out as much as we could every time we saw an ATM to not spend so much money on the fees. So we would do like somewhere between 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on which countries we were in. There's some countries like Guatemala where it's kind of known that ATMs might not have money in them, so you might want to travel with a little bit more. And we would get about 3 weeks budget. I'd keep a week's budget on me, and then we would put 2 weeks budget somewhere in the truck, just stashed, and sometimes separate. And then we had another stash of American cash just in case we ran into times where we couldn't get money out of ATMs, we were really remote, just anything unexpected. So we had a few $100s somewhere else.
Okay, and how did you do currency changes?
We tried to do a pretty good job at budgeting our money and paying attention, knowing how much longer we were going to be in a country, and then not taking out too much. And then inevitably you do have to change over money at the border, and there's always people there who will change over money for you, and you just have to play hardball when it comes to the rates that they're going to give you. And I'm pretty good at that, so I'll be like, they'll give me a number and I'll be like, no. And then I'll just pretend to walk away. You just need to walk away. And they'll be like, okay, we'll give you that. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. Sounds like you guys are pretty good at that.
Do you work on the road?
Well, we have our YouTube channel and a few projects related to that. So we put in quite a bit of work while we were on the road. But we didn't really make any money. So the trip was basically all just funded by our savings.
That was always our balance that we were trying to find, was striving towards the future goal and then enjoying how hard we had already worked.
Did you have any challenges making sure that you could find a Wi-Fi signal or cell service so that you could upload your videos? Definitely.
Mexico overall, even if you find Wi-Fi, it's super slow. People will say like, oh, it's fantastic Wi-Fi. But if you need to upload or download, there is nowhere in Mexico that has fantastic Wi-Fi. And then as soon as you get across the border to like Guatemala or wherever else, it's way better.
Oh, wow. So you'd have to plan on being there, for 3 or 4 days to get one of your videos to upload?
Well, it ended up meaning that we didn't produce, we didn't put our first video on the internet until 6 months into our trip. So basically like right when we were leaving Mexico.
Got it. Okay. On navigation and communication, how did you make sure you knew where you were and you didn't get lost?
Our primary navigation was Google Maps, which you can download while you have Wi-Fi or whatever, and then use it offline. And then we would kind of cross-reference with maps.me. And then we also have a handheld Garmin GPS that we primarily used whenever we were getting a little further remote, where Google Maps and Maps.me would show that there are no roads. And at that point, we'd start using the GPS mostly just so that we could leave breadcrumbs in case we need to turn around and find our way back out. So that was our primary forms of navigation. As far as communication goes, we just had a cell phone, and we use AT&T all the way through Mexico. And your US plan will work all the way through Mexico. You just have to call them and tell them that you're going to be down there. You need to make whatever changes to your plan. But then once we hit Central America, we would just get local SIM cards. So Tigo or Claro or whatever the local company is. And then you just prepay for gigabytes.
Okay. And did you have a backup plan if you needed to call for help, like an in-reach or a spot?
No, we didn't really have anyone that we would expect to come rushing down and help us. And we also weren't that worried that anything was going to happen. I mean, people live down there. Like, if you break down or something, just do the same thing they would do. You're going to walk back out the road and ask for help.
Yep. Okay, cool. So what was your pre-trip planning process on maintenance for the truck to make sure that you were confident in its ability to get you there and get you back?
Well, we bought the truck like 7 weeks before we left.
Okay.
And in that 7 weeks, we did a few maintenance projects that needed to be done, basically just changed out all the fluids, like flushed the radiator, and just kind of gave it a good looking over. Didn't really have much of a plan beyond that. I brought a little bag full of mechanics tools and a few bits and pieces that I find useful for rigging things together when you do break down. And kind of just set out. Figured, if you break down, you'll just find parts wherever you're at.
And it seemed that you could find an AutoZone in quite a few different places.
Yeah. Well,
not sponsored by AutoZone, by the way. It's not.
Might be a good one.
It'd be great.
Yeah, well, one thing that we found was you go into places and the Toyota T100 is not a very common vehicle, but it's basically like a hodgepodge of other Toyota vehicles. So the parts are all there. You just have to know how to ask for them. So what I would do is get on the AutoZone website in the United States, so in English, and look up the parts I need. And then I could take the part numbers into the AutoZone and get the parts, even though their computer doesn't say it's for a T100. It might be for a Tacoma or a Land Cruiser or something, but it's still the same part.
And then where the countries that don't have AutoZones, which is after Mexico, he would still use AutoZone and find the vehicle that the part existed in. So whether it was a Lexus or something not a T100. And then we would just go to the parts store and say, we need a part for this vehicle. And then we would grab the part, go to the mechanic, and then be like, okay, now you can work on this.
There you go. Okay. Did you guys carry one spare tire or two?
One.
Okay, cool. Let's go through some onboard necessities real quick. How much fuel were you able to carry, and how far did that take you?
Our stock fuel tank is 24 gallons, and we averaged 15.5 miles to the gallon. So what does that work out to? Like 360 miles, something like that?
And how much water did you carry with you, and any recommendations on water purification?
So we carried around 15 gallons of water, and that would last us somewhere between 3 and 5 days. We had a LifeSaver Jerry can, which is one of our 5-ish gallon tanks. And we used that our entire trip for all water. So we got free water from gas stations, wherever we could get non-salty water. We would fill up all of those jerry cans with it, and then just put what was in the non-water filter jerry cans into the water filter jerry can to filter it for our drinking water needs, if that makes sense.
Yep. So you would carry water in each of those jerry cans, fill up the LifeSaver, and then once it was empty, you would just refill it and get all of your water out of that LifeSaver.
Correct.
Exactly.
And you're pretty happy with how that worked out, I assume?
It worked the entire time. We didn't ever have any water illnesses.
Nobody got sick or anything?
No, it was fantastic. And then we ended up using it for showering, too. We got that hose attachment, and that ended up being really nice after we got that.
How often did you have to change out the filter?
We never changed it.
The carbon filter?
Oh, the carbon filters are optional. That's
Okay.
a flavor. So if you just want it to taste better. And it's supposed to be every 500 liters. I can't say that we tracked it very well, so we changed it probably about 4 or 5 times. So we still I bought 2 sets of it, and I still have an entire set left. And then the filter is good for 20,000, or you can buy different levels of how long it's supposed to last. But ours was 20,000 liters, which I did the math. It was going to last us, for our family of 3, the dog and the 2 of us, like 5 years or something crazy like that.
Okay, and you're supposed to change them out every 3 years anyway?
Yeah, that's what I read when I got the filter. It was something I didn't realize when I bought it. And so I did a review video on the water filter because I just thought it was so... Like, I had been searching for something like that before our trip. Like, water filtration, pure water was so important to me. And I didn't find that thing. And then when I did find it, we were almost about to leave when I finally found it. Like Google, because they're creepy and they know what you want, it suggested it to me. And I was like, oh, that's what I want. And I went running out to Matt. He's like working on the truck. I go, Matt, check this thing out. This is exactly what we need. And I was like so excited about it. And he was like, that's really expensive. I was like, yeah, but I already did all the math on it. And it's totally going to work out. And he's like, okay. So I order it, and then it totally worked out, and it was great. And it's just one of those things where you're just that excited about it that I just really wanted to tell everybody else about it. So we're definitely 100% not sponsored by them. I just genuinely think that it's a fantastic option.
I love that when you find something that's totally perfect and just passing that knowledge on to other people. Tell us about your solar setup. I don't think you guys used a generator. I think it was just solar. Can you give us some details on that?
Yeah. Our solar panels are from Renogy. And they're just the kind of panels that you would like put on top of your house or whatever. So we have 300 watts of solar panels, and it goes down through a charge controller. And then we have a house battery bank. It's 150 amp hours. And that's separate from our starter battery. And then, so the panels charge the battery bank, or I wired it up so that the alternator on the truck could also power the battery bank. And we chose not to mount our panels to the truck because we were going to be traveling through hot places, and we wanted to be able to park the truck in the shade. And then I basically just have an extension cord so we could put the panels up to 100 feet away from the truck and still plug them in.
Okay, and you were pretty happy with how that's worked out?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a pain. Once again, we're hoping to make some changes so that our setup and breakdown of camp will be a little bit faster. So I think that in the future, I'll probably mount the panels to the roof of the camper, but I'll come up with some kind of a quick release system so we still have the option of pulling them off the roof if we're going to stay somewhere for a couple of days.
Okay, cool. And remind me, what refrigerator did you guys use?
It's a 66-liter SnowMaster. It's a dual cabinet. So we have 2 cabinets in it. One of them is set up to be a freezer, and the other one is a refrigerator.
Okay, and you were happy with that? No issues?
Still using it. Looking
Awesome.
at it right now on the boat.
Oh, very good. So you moved it to the boat.
Yep.
That's great. Any specific recovery gear you use and would recommend using?
I keep it pretty simple. We just have a tow strap and a shovel. I would definitely recommend having a good shovel. We don't carry any kind of traction boards, and we don't have a winch or anything. We do have a come-along, so like a hand winch kind of a thing.
Uh-huh.
We got stuck once on the trip, and that was plenty of stuff to get us out. As long as you're not crossing anything like a Sahara Desert or something, it's pretty much always sticks and rocks and stuff that you can throw underneath your tires.
Okay, great.
Any philanthropy, volunteering, or inspiring others that you focus on during your trip? Or any opportunities you've seen other overlanders do good as they travel?
One of our major goals with documenting our trip really was to show people that real people can do this. Just normal people. You don't have to be super awesome, super expensive, awesome rigs. And so we've had a lot of people tell us we are inspiring them to get out there and do this, and that they can do this. Another thing is we pick up trash for people who become one of our patrons. And it came about that there was just a lot of trash on the beaches where we were at in Mexico and Central America. And a lot of other YouTubers will, give their patrons t-shirts and stuff like that. And we're like, well, we don't want to do that, and we don't really have the resources to do that. Like, what can we do? And so we were like, well, let's pick up this trash. Like, it's bothering us anyways. So let's pick it up and do it in honor of these people who are also helping support the creation of our content. So, I guess that's part of philanthropy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. It's doing good along the way. And I think you're really on point there, that to go do a trip like you guys did, you don't have to be someone with a lot of monetary resources. You can save up and be super smart about what you do and still go do a trip. You don't need to have a bunch of fancy stuff. You can if you want to, if that's your thing, but you don't need to. And when you're going out and you're on your trip, picking up trash and rubbish along the way is huge. So good for you guys. That's awesome. I love it.
Thanks.
So let's wrap it up with some fun facts about you. Any new hobbies you enjoy as an overland traveler?
Well, I'd say that I pretty well covered that I want to go surfing.
Yes, you did. That's awesome.
I wanted a kayak before we left, and we didn't get one. And then I proved to Matt on the trip how much it would have been great to have a kayak by us renting them. And then we ended up getting a kayak. So we have like a fold-up kayak now that's part of our overland setup, and I really like it.
Nice. What keeps your co-driver occupied on long drives?
Well, I'm the co-driver. Matt is a mess if I'm driving, so it just works better if I'm
we
not.
We can relate to that.
Hey.
Whatever, that's, everybody's got their thing. So I'm just like, I don't really need to drive. That's cool. So I sit on maps. I'm navigator. I am researching iOverlander for campsites. I'm looking through the guidebook for the next things we're going to do. So, and during that whole time, I'm reciting it to Matt, and I'm just telling him what's going on. I normally prepare our snacks and lunches, and then I feed them to him. So a lot of times we'll enjoy an apple, and I will be like, do you want some peanut butter? And I'll just like spread peanut butter on his apple as he's eating it. Or, there's a variety of things.
That's good.
Keep the car moving.
Yep.
There you go. Do you play any musical instruments on the road?
No.
Neither one of us do, no.
What's your favorite drink in the morning to get you going?
I have to have coffee. I like it black and simple. Matt gives me crap about my coffee addiction all the time, especially when we are doing a early departure, because that means that like I still need the stove hooked up to the propane. So we unhook it from the propane when we leave camp. So it's just an extra process that he likes to give me crap about because he doesn't need coffee.
All right, Matt, what's your thing in the morning?
What's your secret?
Go surfing. Yeah, I'm pretty much just roll out of bed, drink some water, and ready to go.
Awesome. Good on you for that. What's a favorite beverage at night to wind down after a long day on the road?
Cold beer.
There we go. What's your favorite kind of beer?
I like my Mexican lagers, so there was plenty of good beer as far as I was concerned.
Oh.
I like a really good IPA, so I was years of deprivation.
Oh, Amie, don't tell me there's no IPA in Mexico and South America.
It's far and few in between and very
Okay, we're not going.
expensive.
Oh no, we're going to stock up.
We'll have to have a trailer.
Sorry.
What is your best advice to aspiring overlanders like us?
My advice is to just be true to yourselves. So think about what it is that you want out of the trip and then just pursue that. Don't get hung up on the idea of needing to make it to any particular landmark or anything like that. Some of the people that we met along the way that were enjoying the trip the most were people that left home thinking that they were going to spend 18 months or 2 years or something driving to the tip of South America, and we would meet them in, say, Costa Rica, and they were already 18 months into their trip and just happy as could be because they realized that all they were doing was driving, and they really just wanted to stop and hang out places when they met someone cool or they were in a town they liked. And so they finally just gave up on the idea that they had to get anywhere and just took it day by day and did whatever sounded the most fun. And were happy with wherever they ended up after they ran out of money or ran out of time.
Yeah, we saw a lot of people trying to do that entire Pan American trip in 6 months, a year or something, and they're just really stressed out and didn't seem very happy. So yeah, like Matt said, like, be true to yourself and, like, listen to yourself. And if you get somewhere and you really like it, like, just be there. Like, enjoy that place. And then if you get somewhere that you thought you were going to love and you don't like it, like, don't make yourself stay there. Move on. Because that's going to happen.
Yeah, ditch it and keep moving. It's good. I love it. So how can people learn more about you and what you guys are doing?
Well, we're called the Traveling Together Journal, so you can check us out on the travelingtogetherjournal.com or the Traveling Together Journal on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook.
YouTube is definitely our number one. We produce a documentary travel series every other week on Sundays around 4 p.m. And we try to share the honest portrayal of travel on the road like this. The good times, the bad times, the whole story.
Yep, we think it's very authentic, so we would definitely encourage our listeners to go check out their YouTube channel. We've enjoyed that for, I think, about a year now, but you guys do a great job, so keep doing what you're doing.
And then the last thing is that on our website, the Traveling Together Journal, we have an interactive route map. So if you are planning your trip and you're curious about a certain region, we have dropped pins on the interactive route map that are the videos. So you can like look at our entire route that we drove and be like, oh, I'm really interested in this region. And then you click that pin and it'll take you to the video.
I don't know which of you came up with that idea, but that is fantastic.
It was my idea,
Nice
but
job,
Matt
Amie.
made it happen.
Teamwork. I love it. Nice. All right. Any more information you'd like to give or useful resources that our listeners should check out?
Well, I'm sure it's repetitive, but if you're going to do the trip, you should probably have iOverlander. And don't forget, you can download Google Maps. So you can select your regions, Google it if you need to learn how to do it, but it is so key to just pre-download your maps. And then they do take up a lot of space, so just do certain regions at a time and then delete them as you exit those regions.
And it sounds like you used a combination of both Google Maps and Maps.me.
Yeah, but once we really, we did trial and error on all of them, and there's more error on Maps.me than Google Maps. Once we started doing downloaded Google Maps, we just didn't even know about it until we were in Guatemala and we met some other travelers and they taught us about it. And then once we learned that, it was a game changer.
Got it.
Nice. Thank you so much for your time. We are humbled that you've given us such an amazing look into your world, experiences, and knowledge. Safe travels and adventures to you, and we hope to catch up with you again in the future.
Thanks for having us, Chris and Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Good night.
Solid advice. I loved Matt's wrap up and advice here. Taking it day by day without a time limit to finish a trip. And as both of them stated, number one, be true to yourself.
And being patient. You might have organized your journey for the next month, but it could change day by day.
Yeah, it seemed like what they were saying at the very end there was a few travelers had a very, very specific timeline they needed to hit, and those were the people that were more stressed out and didn't seem to be enjoying themselves. If you're going to do an overlanding trip and basically sell everything and hit the road to go do it, it would be wise to enjoy it. And then be sure and follow Amie and Matt on social media, especially their YouTube channel. You will find them at The Traveling Together Journal. Great social media, great YouTube videos, so be sure and check them out.
It's a good idea to visit the show notes page on our website at ghteverland.com/podcasts. Select the Traveling Together Journal episode. All the details and helpful links are already there for you.
And send any questions, suggestions, and feedback to ghteverlandpodcast@gmail.com. If you have an Amazon Echo, it's a lot of fun to say, Alexa, play the GHT Overland podcast. And she should play it for you. We'd love it if you'd connect with us on social media at GHT Overland, and be sure to share this episode with your friends who enjoy travel off the beaten path. Overland travel is all about meeting new friends, seeing the most amazing places on earth, and of course, new food and new drinks.
So do you have a favorite drink or food recipe for overlanding? We'd love to feature it and you, so send them to ghteverlandpodcast@gmail.com. Before you race off, it would mean the world to us if you'd rate and review the podcast. Give GHT Overland a little iTunes love so we can reach as many overlanders as possible. Thank you, and we will see you next Thursday for a brand new episode of the GHT Overland podcast. Bye.